And something about reading, I'd always read Conan, but I had always read it sort of just like sporadically, and I never really, and it was always fitted in with all of these people who had come in later and added to it and taken out. They called pastiche writers, like Lynn Carter, L. Sprague de Camp, all these people. And so, but Del Rey decided that they were going to put out an edition that was just completely, an exorcism. Like they trimmed all of that out, and they found just Howard stuff. And something about reading that, being kind of alone in a new city, just something just literally was like a light switch. And I went, oh, I know how to do this.
Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and I'm here tonight with author Jonathan French. Jonathan, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, it looks like you have quite the weather there behind you.
Yeah, I'm up in the North Georgia mountains right now, and it's a gorgeous view. But yeah, the clouds, the weather, it's been fun today.
Yeah. Well, thankfully the weather's behaving enough for us to have a chat. So thanks again.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah. So and also looking at your bio, I noticed that the first couple of books you wrote were met with really positive reception. What was that like to have your first couple of books be so popular? And I think your first book was nominated for the best first novel at the Georgia Author of the Year Awards in 2012.
Yeah. It's been so long. Like it was fun. I mean, it was one of those things where critically they did well, but as far as they were self-pubbed, so I never really hit the right kind of momentum that a lot of self-pubs do. So while the people that read them really enjoyed them, the number was minuscule. So I was doing okay as far as reception, but as far as reach, it wasn't very strong. So I somehow just never figured out how to gain that sort of, you know, and it was a long time ago too. I mean, self-publishing changes so fast. I mean, it is completely different now than when I was in it, to the point to where it's like I've lost the ability to speak the language. Like I wouldn't even know where to begin anymore. So it's a tricky thing as far as that goes. And my memory's kind of failing. I mean, it was fun. I think at the time I probably had a nice blissful ignorance. Like I was able to convince myself that they were doing well, and you sort of have to, maybe, or at least I had to. I don't want to speak for everybody. I had to just hold on tight to the good feelings as they came, because otherwise you would just not keep going. You would quit. So maybe there was part of it that I was just kidding myself that things were a lot better than they were. But as far as sales numbers go, it was nothing. It was nothing. Yeah, I mean, but I think it was nice to at least know that I wasn't wasting my time. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, okay, this is, I'm okay at this. Like, I can do this. So that was good. I think that's the best thing, is that it kept me going. It was just a nice way to say, all right, you're not totally kidding yourself here.
If you could go back to 2011, 2012 and give yourself some advice, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh man, God, great and hard question. I think I would have told myself to develop better habits. I didn't realize then, and how could you? But I went through this weird period where I wrote my first manuscript and then tried to trad pub it and get agents and all that, and then it just didn't really work out for various reasons that probably are super boring. But so they kind of got shelved. You know, you heard about the book in the drawer, like all authors have those books. My first book, Exiled Air, could have easily just stayed in the drawer. But you know, I kind of like let it sit for 2 years after I couldn't get it into the big dogs. And I had people pushing me to self-pub it, and they were right. And so when I finally did it, but I had basically a new baby, my first, well, first and only now, but my first kid. And I think I was working a dead end job and realized that it was like, I need to do this or it's never gonna, it's better to have tried it and failed than never to have tried it. So it was just nothing risked. You're not going to gain anything. So, but if I had to talk to myself, I would have said, look, life's going to get complicated. This kid is going to get older and it's actually going to get harder. It's weird. You'd think that like writing or publishing when you have a baby is difficult. I found that to be easy because they sleep a lot and they don't require, the older they get, the more I had to get involved, the more, especially once school started and all that. And so my time just kind of evaporated and I didn't develop. I'm very slow as a writer. And I think that I would have told myself, like, look, you need to find the thing that works and you need to stick with that come hell or high water. And don't ever give that up for any reason. And I abdicated a lot of writing time for a lot of reasons. And some of them were legit, but I think a lot of them I could have been more aggressive about protecting it. And I think I also could have been more aggressive about treating it more seriously like a job as opposed to just when I could do it. I've been very fortunate in that that hasn't totally held me back, but as far as output goes and developing good habits, that it was, yeah. So I would have given myself a stern talking to and said, look, you need to be more consistent and figure out how to do that.
So before your first book, what made you, what have you always wanted to be a writer? What was the thing that kind of pushed you in that direction?
I always loved to write. I liked creative writing. It was practically the only homework assignments I ever did. I was a frustrating student for my teachers. So I wasn't like a troublemaker or anything, but I just didn't apply myself. And it was that typical thing like, oh, so much potential and he's just wasting it. And so, but I've always been an artsy guy, but initially I was in the theater. I wanted to, I love being in plays. I was acting, I was in stage crew, I was doing stage combat. So I thought that's what I was going to do. I went to college for that. And even after college, I pursued it, had agents, got parts. I was living in Chicago and got a good review in Time Out Chicago. Like, I had like little things that, and I did a commercial with George Clooney and like, I did these like things. And so no, but I wrote plays. Sometimes I write my own monologues for auditions when it was, they would say, oh, you'd audition, just do a monologue. I just didn't want to find anything. So I would just write it myself. So it was always there. And I played a ton of role-playing games, D&D, that kind of thing. And so I was always writing for the games I would run. So it was always tangential, but I never looked at it as a career. And I was I moved from Atlanta to Chicago when I was like 28, I guess. And for sake of comparison, I'm 41 now. And I moved there because I got a role in a stage show and I didn't know anyone. And I moved there in February. So February in Chicago. I was pretty broke. I was living in a tiny studio. I love that studio. It was great. Sleeping on a mattress on the ground. And basically I started writing because I just wanted to. I had recently gotten a hold of the Del Rey had done a collection of Robert E. Howard's stuff that like Conan, Solomon Kane, Bran McMorn, Cole. And something about reading, I'd always read Conan, but I had always read it sort of just like sporadically. And I never really did. And it was always fitted in with all of these people who had come in later and added to it and taken out. They called pastiche writers like Lynn Carter, L. Sprague de Camp, all these people. And so, but Del Rey decided that they were going to put out an edition that was just completely, an exorcism. Like they trimmed all of that out and they found just Howard's stuff. And something about reading that, being kind of alone in a new city, something literally was like a light switch. And I went, I know how to do this. And it's funny because at the time, Joe Abercrombie's first book, well, actually his first two from his original trilogy, I found them in a library and the third one wasn't even out and no one knew who he was yet. It was like the books were out, but they hadn't hit. And so I read those two, but really it was like Howard clicked. And then I read Abercrombie and I was like, but that you can do this in a modern way too. And so I just started going one day, and 18 months later I had a fantasy manuscript, and I was lucky in that I had developed the world for role-playing games. So I didn't have to do a lot of that. Like, I'd already done the work. I just had to figure out how to do prose.
Mhm.
And when I read those Robert E. Howard stories, it just was like, eureka, there it is. And so I did. And that book ended up being the one we were just talking about, where it sat in a drawer and then I self-pubbed it. So yeah, I mean, and I literally like emailed my agent and said, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. I had a callback at Steppenwolf that I walked away from. That my wife is still pissed at me to this day that I did that. Yeah, I mean, a new thing bit me, and I never regretted it. I never looked back. Like, it was like, this is exactly what I want to do. And so, yeah, it was literally like night and day. Boom, boom, that fast.
What made you walk away from that deal? It just didn't feel right at the time, or was there something else that didn't work out for you?
It was as far as like acting or the Steppenwolf thing, or I'm sorry.
The Steppenwolf thing.
Oh, so yeah, I mean, for your viewers that don't know, it's a really, prestigious theater troupe in Chicago, a theater company, and yeah, my agent got me an audition, and then they said, "Oh, we liked what we saw, but we want to see him with a little bit more polish, and we want him to take these classes, and we want him to like come back with some better material." But that's a good thing. I mean, like,
yeah.
But I just, I had always heard like the day you don't want to go to an audition is the day you need to hang it up, and I didn't want to go. Like, I just didn't want to do it anymore. And so, some people say, "Oh, you got so close," but you don't know that I got close. I mean, it wasn't. I had an old theater professor, God rest his soul. He's gone now, but he told me at the time. He said, "I think you're so afraid of success, you're running from it." And I said, "Come on, it's not a sure thing that anything would have happened with it, But no, I just, I found something I enjoyed more, and I think in a lot of ways, writing was always what I was doing. I don't really think I had an improv teacher tell me once that I was a hopeless playwright, meaning that in improv you're supposed to just go in the moment and just let yourself be led from one to the other. And she said, and I think she was right, that what I was doing was I was actually storyboarding and writing out things way ahead of time in my head, and then just playing that through and sort of almost manipulating scene partners to do that with me. And so she couldn't stand the way I did things. I mean, hated me, and said that I didn't understand improv and all that. But all that is completely random and has nothing to do with what probably your audience gives any 2 cents about. But yeah, I just didn't want to do it anymore. And I enjoyed writing books. Or I thought, oh, this is way better.
Yeah.
So.
No, I think your readers would like to learn about you. So it's really fun to hear your stories and kind of what you've experienced.
Well, let's hope so. Otherwise, they're all tuning out right now. Like, oh god,
yeah.
This guy, boom, let's get at it.
And this leads us into a question from author P.L. Stewart. He asked on Twitter. He wanted to know how your transition from indie star to trad pub star went, what you found the differences are between indie and traditional. And once again, please wish him congrats on the Kyrgyz Reviews star.
Yeah, I think he's the one that like pointed out that I got that. I didn't even know I had that. And yeah, it's funny. I watched the episode that you guys did.
Cool.
He's an exciting guy. I think he's gonna do well. I haven't read his book, but I think he either got a second one coming out, or already out, or he's about to. Yeah, no, he seems like a great dude. So yeah, thanks for the question, and thanks for pointing. I don't ever pay attention anymore. Like, so again, it was it wasn't so long ago, I guess. It was very exciting. I don't know that I would ever call myself so self-pub star to trad star. So like both of those is kind of like, I don't know how true either one of those are, but as far as the self-pub star thing, like really that didn't happen because that, like, for those people who know like how it worked out, I entered my third book, which I had self-published, into the self-publishing fantasy blog off the second year it was going on. And at that point, the only people that knew what it was were the people who'd been in it the first year. Like now it's exploded and it's become amazingly, it's just crazy, just phenomenon. It's just great. but at the time, no one really knew what it was, and it was literally somebody when I was still on Facebook. Like somebody on Facebook was like, "Hey, I read your book. You should enter it."
Hmm.
And that book was The Gray Bastards, and so I entered it into SPFBO, and then that was a really long process. It was like over a year, and the book ended up, winning the whole thing, right? So, but so I think had that been where the story ended, I think that whole self-pub star thing would have happened, because that would have given me like a big audience within that readership. And then I could have just what a lot of people who've gotten discovered through SPFBO have done. They go on to like really dig into that and keep going, and they build the community and they build their readership and they become self-pub stars. For me, that didn't happen, because right as I won, or I shouldn't say I won, because really the book won. Right as the book won the contest, I was transitioning to trad, because it was like it was being picked up and gone. So I didn't. I literally had to pull it down off of sale 6 weeks after winning SPFBO.
Oh wow!
And so, and then it was a year plus. I think it was like 15, 17 months before it was out again. And so there was a lot of people that were pissed, because they like, and I kind of got annoyed, because the book suddenly, SPFBO did what it said it was going to do, which was it got a lot of people like their eyes on the book, but then there was no book.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and I got angry emails, like people saying you're a sellout, and like, oh, just chasing the money, and and that they were few and far between, but they did happen, and there was some nasty stuff. And and I had one guy in particular be like, I hope it fails, because like, I hope when it gets relaunched, like it fails your career like tanks. And all.
Jeez.
Yeah, no, I mean that's that's the modern
Yeah.
that's the modern day for you. People with I'm going to type because I have feelings. That's just the way it is. But no, so I mean, I never felt like a self-pub star. I felt like somebody who got really fortunate, but the timing seemed both very fortuitous and also kind of crappy, because I wish I kind of had my cake and eat it too, and I'm not complaining, but in some ways it would have been nice to ride that wave for a couple months before getting approached by New York. But whatever, it happened, and I shouldn't complain, and I'm not. So it's not sour grapes, but I didn't really get to experience any of that. I went into this very strange transition very, very quickly. For me, it was quick, but for the audience, it seemed like that SPFBO put this book in their face, and then for those people who didn't get it in that 6 weeks, they suddenly couldn't get it anymore. And so that was tough. That was kind of a strange place to be. Now, as far as like how it played out, I will tell you, like, it was very exciting, because while the contest had no prize other than exposure, and Mark Lawrence, who started it, has always said, and I think this is true, and it still to this day is true, the goal was nothing. The prize is readership and getting signal to your book and to the authors. That's it. So, and there's a lot of people who I think, and this is tricky, because I think there's some merit to this. I understand there's some logic to this, who think that the most successful people who enter, like, the big goal is to transition from self to trad because of SPFBO. I am not the only one to have done it. There are people who've done it since, and I don't even know that I was the first to do it. I'm not sure about that, but again, I was in the second year, so who knows? But it's probably a guess as to whether Josiah Bancroft signed his deal before I did. Is probably the way it goes. But I believe that Mark is right. I don't think that the measure of a good self-pub book is if it transitions to trad. I do not believe that. I never have, and I never will. It does not give your book any more merit. It does not. It gives your book certain advantages, and it gives your book certain disadvantages. And it also, all of that depends on who you are and as an author, and who you're with as an agent and a publisher. So it all comes down to individuals. But I will say that for me, it was exciting because it's what I always wanted. I enjoyed self-publishing. I was not scared to do it, but I always wanted to be with an agent and with a publisher and with an editor. I always wanted that experience. I wanted to know what that was like. And I wanted to know what that was like at a high level. I didn't want like a small regional publisher or like a startup indie press. My friends who had done that, I was never impressed. Not with them, but just with the way they were being handled.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was a goal, and it was a stated goal. And so when it happened, I was all about it. I was like, yes, this is exactly what I have always wanted. And so I was there whole ham. Plenty of people could or would have turned it down and would have been just as fine to do that. And they have. So that was that, but at the time it was like, thank goodness, this is great. It was kind of a dream come true. And, finally getting to like kind of be allowed into that world and be invited in and to like dispel all those mysteries and not have to wonder about it anymore was great. And that comes with positives and negatives. I mean, some things are way better than you ever thought they'd be, and some things are not. And then at the end of the day, it just becomes your new reality, and it is what it is. And you can affect some of it, and you can not others. So, look, on the whole, it was very exciting. I don't regret it at all. I am never afraid to critique the things I love, which I know sometimes can be controversial. So, I mean, I have gripes, but I have things I wish would go differently and would be differently, not just for me, but for the industry as a whole. But I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I probably still will self-publish another book. I can't imagine I won't at some point, but it won't be out of spite. It won't be it won't be out of anger. It'll just be because some books just need to be self-pubbed, and not because they're low quality, but just because the trad world has no place for them. And so, I haven't done it yet. But I probably will at some point. So I'm happy. I always wanted to be in both camps, and I've now been in trad longer than I was ever in self. So I'm more of a trad guy. I don't really know what's going on in self anymore. And my friends my colleagues and acquaintances that are way more experienced and they're masters at it. And I would go to them. If I was to self-pub a book tomorrow, I would be sending out emails to friends and saying, okay, I need help.
Yeah.
Because it's a tough thing, and it's complicated and it's detailed, and it's very fast moving.
Yeah. Lots of work. When you did transition over to traditional publishing, did that change your approach in your writing, or kind of your mindset of what you wanted to create?
It didn't at first, because the book already existed. So, Gray Bastards had been self-pubbed, and then that's what they wanted. And so it was this whole idea of, well, we're taking it down off sale. We're going to do an editorial pass. We're going to polish it up. And they did say, like, do you want a chance to really change anything? And I said, no, because I did not want anyone who had read the self-pub version to feel like they had to rebuy the book. Like, I wanted it to so if all you had was the self-pub, because I knew I was doing another one at that point. So I had a 2-book deal initially. And only reason I got that was because they asked me, they said, what are you writing on right now? I said, well, I'm about a third of the way done with the sequel to this book. And they said, great, we're interested in both. Can we see what you've got? And so it was a 2-book deal. And so really I was just continuing on that train. There wasn't really anything to change. It was, all right, a bunch of professionals who are new to me in this working relationship, my editor, my agent, we're going to give this feedback. And then what are you willing to do? And so it didn't initially change how I did things. Where it got weird was about midway through writing True Bastards, the second Lotlands book. I think it was just me. I just kind of panicked in a way, because the game did change and I felt like a fish out of water. And, I had done 3 books where when I felt they were ready, I pulled the trigger and they were out. And now suddenly I was in this world where there's like a 7 to 9 month or whatever, like lead up with editing and marketing and all this other stuff. And it was very throwing for me. So what basically happened is that I was on a good kick, and then I got into the launch process, like the editorial process for the first book while I was still writing the second one. And that's where suddenly things got weird, because I was like, I was in two worlds at once. And so yeah, it was tough. There was a minute there where it was really, really tough. And I think that had I just done what I normally did and not overthought it and just trusted myself and trusted how I did things, it would have been a lot better. But I overthought it and I got panicked and weirded out. And so, it stalled me. I ended up missing like a deadline, and then it was like, what do I do? And so it was tough. And so not having deadlines was really the hardest part, because suddenly it was like having homework. And some writers really thrive on deadlines, and I found I wasn't. And that was my biggest challenge. Was was that, and honestly, in a lot of ways, still is.
Hmm. How have you overcome those times when you felt like you were under pressure from a deadline? What are things that you do to ease that pressure on yourself?
Oh man, I wish I had a healthy answer. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I have figured that out.
Hmm.
I think if, and honestly, I think that there's sometimes you just have to embrace who you are and what you're able to do. I mean, like, I hate to use this quote because it makes me sound like I'm making a comparison, and I'm not. Uh, and of course, can you trust the internet? I don't even know if this quote is real, but apparently George R. R. Martin has said that he actually doesn't love writing; he loves having written.
Hmm.
So writing the process bums him out, but the finished product and all that, he loves the ability to look back on it. And when he said that, like, I was kind of like, yeah, that's the truth. Like, for me, it's the truth. Like, I'm not really a big fan of the process.
Hmm.
But I'm always really glad when it's done and I can, be like, and breathe, and people start reading it, then it's great. But like, getting into it, it's not always great. So, deadlines have just become a thing that they exist. And I don't think I'm only really, in a lot of ways, two books experience with it. The two Bastards books that weren't self-pub. So Bastards 2 and 3.
Hmm.
Those are really the only deadlines I've experienced. Now, recently, between after Bastards 3, I was done with it and it came out. I wasn't really working on another book, but I took some work for a Hollywood studio, doing some like script pitches and, like,
Hmm.
kind of story stuff. And that was like on a constant 1 week turnaround. Now, it was only like a page or two every time, but I've been doing it for months now. And that sort of changed some things for me, because I've started to realize, like, okay, I get how this is when you need to turn something in a week, or then they like what they see and then they want more, and then you have 3 more weeks. And that's a big difference from like the year
Hmm.
that I was getting, for books. It's like, oh, here, take a year. Um, and so I don't know if it's going to translate. I don't know if the skills I learned doing 1 to 3 week turnarounds are going to translate into the next book thing. But, and I've talked with my agent. It might be that I'm just, and I don't know if this is, maybe a lot of professional writers are going to scoff at this, but I might just be the writer who doesn't ever have a deadline, in that I just wait till the book is done before anyone gets to see it.
Yeah.
The problem with that, of course, and it's sort of the self-pub way to do it, right? That's
Hmm.
all really any self-pub people do. The problem with doing that in the trad world is that the one advantage in the trad world is that you can get paid before it's done. And if you're unable to do that, then it's kind of like, well, what exactly is the advantage here? So I don't know, but that's all my fault. I'm not blaming anybody else.
Yeah. When you do finish a book, do you have a celebration that you do, or anything special that you do to celebrate finishing the book?
Um, no, I usually like sleep for a really long time. But the thing is, like, for me, it's such a long process. I'm just not fast. And so
Mhm.
by the time you get there, and the longer you do it, I did have one book where I just like broke down and started crying. Like, it was
Mm.
like, it was like baby, like ugly, like, "Ugh." But I think I've now done it 5 times, 6 times, five that people have seen. And, um, I think that it just starts to wear off. Like it just starts to become like, okay, so no, I don't have really like a great answer for that, unfortunately. It's my family is always like, what should we do? And what do you want to, do you want to do a like favorite meal, or let's take you out? Or of course before COVID, they would say,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, no, not really. Like, whatever. No, I'm boring that way.
I just want to sleep.
Yeah, it's like it's the one time my brain goes kind of quiet for a day or two, and then it's like, okay, I can kind of rest. But
I'm back on it. Yeah. So, what was your inspiration for the Gray Bastards when you started writing it, or for the series itself?
it was I was going to run a D&D game, and my players really like having like a strong lead. Like they don't want to just come to the table and like, oh, they want to have like a strong like theme. And so, I think that's getting more popular in gaming now, but at the time I don't know that it was, but gaming is in this cool renaissance where everyone is like coming up with new terminologies and everyone's really like into it. But no, so it was like a combination of things. It was like spaghetti westerns, Sons of Anarchy meets Tolkien, but you know, uh, half orcs in a mercenary gang, and it just all kind of like, and again, I was going to run it as a game, and my wife was like, "What are you doing? Why would you waste your time with this?" Like she didn't mind me gaming, but she was saying, "This is a book. Write the book."
Mm-hmm.
And so um, I decided to bang out a first chapter and see, and it went really fast. And the first chapter, it's exactly as you see it in the book. It has not changed from the day I wrote it.
Oh wow!
and and uh, and so yeah, and so I gave it to some people I trust, and all of them were like, "You have something here, and it's very different from what you were doing. So give it a go." And the rest is history. I mean, it took a while. It took several years, but it's the fastest I've ever written a book. It's the shortest book I've ever written. Nothing's ever been that quick since. But yeah, I mean, it was just and a lot of it too. There was a business side of it. The business side of it was I had written 2 books in a series that I was self-pubbing, and I was going to a lot of cons and
Mm.
like having a vendor table. And there were a ton of people that would just come up and be like, "Well, I don't read series until they're done."
Mm.
And so there was this sort of this challenge to be like, "Oh, okay, so then read this," because I wanted a book on the table that I could be like, "Cool, you don't want my big long 6 to 8 book series that I might never finish? Awesome. How about this? Buy that, and then see what they do." And so for like a year, I had that for like all of 2015 and part of 2016. I was able to do that. 3 books on a table. People would be like, "I don't read series till I'm done." I'm like, "Gray Bastards is 1 and it's over." And so there was sort of a mercenary like monetary thing to it too.
Mm. And for you, and I guess it goes back to your almost back to your D&D time, but what makes a character compelling?
Oh man. So for me, character's everything. I mean, I'm not a plotter. I don't do massive outlines. It's always about creating characters and making sure that they have a lot of depth. And even if all that backstory, like, I don't know, anyone who's played D&D has had that player come to the table who just wants to like bore you to tears with the backstory. And the thing is that no one wants that in a book, in a game, like, but where it's cool is if it's headcanon, or if it's just like this is the other thing, it's an actor thing. It informs your choices, right? So you don't necessarily need to know all of this biography in linear order, but if I know it and that informs how I play the character, then the character becomes very interesting. So it's a lot of show don't tell, in that there's all of this stuff that you know is there, that you're not telling anybody anything, but then it, and it informs their choices. So you know, uh, Bastards 3 isn't all that. It hasn't been out that long, so I don't want to spoil anything but I will tell you that in the very first chapter of book 1, Oates is at a well and he's just dumped a bucket of water over his head. And that's when Jack comes out. That's what starts the book, is that Oates yells. I knew why Oates was at that well dumping a bucket of water on his head, but I didn't put it in the book. But I knew why he was there. And even in book 3, when it's finally in Oates' head, it's his perspective. We find out why. But I never actually say, you have to kind of put it together. But I don't ever actually say, well, and that's why that morning I went out and dumped a bucket of water on my head. It's never that explicit, but you do find out that there's this haunting thing that happens in his past. And if you put it together, you realize, oh shit, that's why he was out there, because it was messing with him again. And so, sometimes those things pay off in dividends. So for me, an interesting character is all of that depth under all that stuff under the crust that doesn't get info dumped in a monologue, but it just boils. It kind of just is like a slow simmer all the time. And if you know those things and don't stress over communicating them to your audience, don't stress over, oh, I need my reader to know everything about this tragic backstory. Don't stress over that. Just let it inform the way that your character behaves and speaks and acts and interacts. That to me, that's where that's the ticket. So yeah, like I could give a rat's ass about physical description. Like I don't care about the color of his cloak. I don't care about like any of that. I don't care. Just give me strong motivations that show up organically, and then I'm impressed. And that's what I always strive to do myself. And that's the grail I'm always chasing. Sometimes I feel like I'm successful, sometimes not, but it's a good goal. It's a good shot to take, I think.
And that leads into a question from Chris Roger from Twitter. He said, who is your favorite Lotlands character?
Oh, Chris. Sometimes they'll ask me like, which of my kids or dogs is my favorite. Like I mean, I don't know. God, I want to qualify like a quantifier, like for what, like favorite to go into battle with, favorite to go drinking with. Like it just depends. I don't know. I think, I mean, if I don't say Ugfuck, then everyone is going to say you're, so, I mean, it's kind of a no brainer, but, no, I mean, yeah, I mean, they're all, I wouldn't put them in there if I didn't love or hate them. And sometimes you got to do both. Right now the mood I'm in, I would love for Culprit to be here right now. I'm on vacation. I'm at a cabin in the woods, and I've got a fire and a beer, and I would love for Culprit to be here, just because he's the guy for me that I would want to just josh around and hang with, and wouldn't worry about anything I say offending anyone. And he's not threatening to me in any way. And we could just kind of bounce stuff off each other and be brothers and have a laugh. So the moment you're asking me the question, yeah, I mean, I think I would love for Culprit to be here. But for people who haven't read book one, or people who haven't gotten to book 2, he's not even in book 1. So it's a terrible answer. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like if somebody's just now like reading Gray Bastard, like his favorite character is who? It's like, well, okay. So I guess, for the cheap shot is Ugg.
The catch-all.
Yeah.
And Jack Cropper had a question. When can we expect the next Autumn's Fall saga book, if ever?
Ooh, took a shot at me there at the end, if ever. Ouch. But it's fair. It's not an if ever. The only thing that's going to stop me from finishing it is death. That the Autumn's Fall world is nearest and dearest to my heart. I have a lot of stories I want to tell with that world, and it was always meant to be 6 or 8 books, and those 6 or 8 books are still somewhere in here, hopefully. The problem is, again, I'm slow. I can't write 2 things at once. I'm not a multi-draft dude.
Yeah.
And my biggest issues right now, no one wants them. And I'm not trying to say like, oh, poor pitiful me, but again, I pursued traditional publishing, and I got traditional publishing. Excuse me. And right now, my agent loves the Autumn's Fall books. My editor could give 2 shits. So I've got one person in my trad camp who's on board, and one person in my trad camp who's not. And so it's like, what are you going to do? But I have great friends again in the self pub space who are pushing me to say, well, just keep it in that space, and that's totally valid. And I think that's probably where it will stay. Um, so my hope is soon, but I've been saying that for quite a while. But I will tell you, like flat out, to this day, the book I am most proud of is The Errantry of Bantam Flynn, which is Autumn's Fall book 2. There is no book I've written that I'm more proud of than that book. And I'm really proud of Free Bastards. But like Errantry of Bantam Flynn is my favorite of the stuff I've written. And so no, the fact of not going back is not an option. Like I have to. But I also have to pay the bills. And I can't do that with Autumn's Fall right now. So hopefully that'll change one day. I would love for it to. I would love to be able to leave everything else behind and just dive right back into that world. It'd be great.
Do you know how many books will be in that series? Have you decided how many books it'll take for you
I have like scope tends to creep on me.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to like write and things get longer as I go. So you can actually see that in the Bastards books. Like it's like they just get wider and wider. And I could have done a 4th Bastards, being honest, but so 6 to 8, I would say 6 minimum, 8 maximum. I didn't call it a saga like for no reason. Like I wanted to earn that. You know, like a saga is a term that gets tossed out a lot. People use it a lot, but they don't ever actually do it. I would like to not be one of those people. Like I would like to really deliver on that. So, and it's easy since most of my characters are basically immortal in that series, or at least very long living, it's easy to do that, to play it across generations, and which would be nice. So yeah, 6 to 8.
Do you have the whole story plotted out in your mind and kind of an idea where you're going to go with it?
I don't really plot too much. I'm a very much a pantser discovery writer type guy. I don't plot hard. I mean, I guess there's another Martin term. He calls it a gardener, where you throw a bunch of seeds out and you just you kind of know where they are, and you sort of think maybe and then when you go to harvest them, some of them come up and some of them don't. But you will never like find an outline. You won't find any notebooks where I've gone through, and you won't find that. I don't do that. If I'm writing, I'm writing. Like I don't ever sit down and like say, well, what if he did this? And at this point, this action scene, I don't do that. And that works for some people. I'm not knocking it. It just doesn't work for me. I sit down and I start trying to type the story out and write it. And just as it comes. And oftentimes I'm just very surprised by what happens. Sometimes it feels like taking dictation. It's very strange. So I have major moments for everything that I want to do with Autumn's Fall. But I also have major moments for everything I want to continue to do with Bastards too, that may or may not happen. So hopefully I'll get there. I mean, Autumn's Fall 3 was about a 4th written like in 2016, and then Bastards exploded, and so this may hurt people who are fans, and I really do appreciate them. I really do, because they're a small and dedicated crew, but and very patient and quiet. But it might hurt them to know that there's a good 35,000 words of Autumn's Fall 3 has been sitting in one computer drive after another for a long time. And my wife has like total instructions that if I drop dead tomorrow, to just put it out and to just say like, it's unfinished, but this is what he had. Cause we want people to see it, but it's not done. I mean, it's barely a first act, if that. So, yeah, I mean, I know what I want to do for 3. So 3 is a lot there. And then I've got major moments for the next few, but no, I don't tend to, make a lot of big plans.
So if something, God forbid, would happen to you, and would you want someone to write the books and finish them for you with your notes, or would you want just the notes to be out there?
There are no notes, so it wouldn't matter.
Oh, no, even outline, like just a general idea, nothing like that.
Nope. None of that stuff exists. Like, and it's not for any protective, like snotty reason, or it's just not how I do things. And so, because of that, it's just the nature of it. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, no one, I mean, put it this way: if someone could do it in a way that would keep my family like provided for, then go crazy. I mean, I'm not here. What do I care? But I think they would have a hell of a time. I think they would have. I don't. I mean, it wouldn't really worry. Be like, well, there's nothing to go on here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I wouldn't want to wish that on anyone.
Yeah. So you've seen both the traditional side of publishing and the self pub side.
Mhm.
What is the future of publishing?
um, hopefully, we're gonna find a way to get Amazon out of it.
Hmm.
Um, I know that's my publishers are probably like, and every self pub person is probably like, oh shit. But we've got the whole thing from soup to nuts. We've got to get out from under this one thing.
Mhm.
It's not good. It's not going to hold. Um, so I don't know what the future of publishing is, but I know what I hope it's not. And I don't want to see it all being steered under one entity that has all of the cards. I think that's dangerous. I think it's flat out dangerous. Um, so my hope is that and flat out like the trad world needs to balls up and figure out a way to like take that on. The indie world's going to have a harder time because self pubs that's all they've got, and they'll make people mad and they'll say that's not true, but it's kind of true. Like and it's not kind of true. It is true. Like a lot of them wouldn't know what to do tomorrow if Amazon said we're done with you. We're not going to
Yeah.
publish your stuff anymore. It's a tough business. It's always been a tough business. It's still going to be a bunch of people pouring blood, sweat, and tears into words, and a lot of them will just fall by the wayside, and no one will ever see their stuff. That
Mm.
won't change. Um, but I do think that the future of publishing is on the trad world is committed to being more diverse for sure. That is happening. Um, on the author side, we are going to see a lot more of what people are saying they want. Um, you're going to see a lot more diverse writers.
Mhm.
Where trad needs to get a clue, and I think they have it, but where they have an uphill battle is, and this is almost true for the world, really, is you can have your authors forward facing, be diverse all day long, but you need to be more diverse in the decision making side. So, you know, the upper echelons, look, I'm not going to sit here and say that there's a lot of people online and it's a lot of hyperbole, right? And they want to paint everyone who's ever told them no or everyone that's ever as like some evil cabal, like stroking a white cat and being like, bah, we're keeping all these people out. Okay, look, it's no. Are there crappy people in publishing? Yes, there's crappy people in every single like sphere of business and everywhere, art.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, what a lot of people don't want to accept is that at the high in the big five, at the high levels of it, it's a bunch of people who really love books and they're really excited to publish them and they hope they succeed.
Mhm.
And that's been my experience. Like, so yes, it stinks to be told no. Let me tell you something. The rejection never stops. The rejection never stops. As lucky as I've gotten, I still get told no constantly for all sorts of things. Whether it's, will you please, reaching out to another author and saying, will you blurb my next book? And they say no. Or,
Mm.
or your editor and publisher say, like, what's the next thing after Bastards? And you say, I want to do this. And they say no, which has
Mm.
happened to me. So, like, you have to get to a pretty high point to where people don't tell you no. And honestly, is that a point you want to be at? Because for me, the people who are at a point in their lives where no one tells them no are are in a really bad place. I mean, look at Bezos wearing that cowboy hat when he went out into space. He came back down and no one had the balls to say, "Hey, Jeff, you look like a fucking douche in that cowboy hat. Take it off. Like, you look terrible." No one said anything because no one wants to tell him no. And so he looked like a prized jackass. And it's just a stupid thing, like some guy some bald dude in a dumb hat. But like, you don't want to be in a place where you're told no, right?
Yeah.
Or you want to be in a place where at least people continue to tell you that. So I'm off topic. My point is this: trad publishing is a bunch of on the whole, is a bunch of really, really, really passionate people about books, and they want to. And at the end of the day, you can sit here and you can say, "Oh, does this editor want this? Does this agent want this?" And you're poring over stuff. Maybe I should write this. And what do they want? If a book excites them and they want it, they're going to go with it. And they are going to hope it succeeds, and it doesn't always. So there's not this whole like agenda on the whole of like, we're going to keep these people out. If they're passionate about it, they hope it succeeds. They want it to go. Where the problem is that the writer side is getting more and more diverse, and we see a lot more people being represented. Okay. But on the backside, behind the scenes, that's still not totally true. And until we get there, then it's gonna, that's gonna be like a kicker. And there's uncomfortable things in that especially no one wants to hear from a straight white dude with a Southern accent. Like, I know that this is gonna like piss people off, and I'm not trying to poke the bear. This is just one guy talking, and I have not that much experience. But I'll tell you right now, like, there are things that need to happen behind the scenes before they can happen in front of the scenes, and that's their uphill battle to face. Now, self-pub doesn't have that problem. Self-pub, whoever you are and whoever you want to reach out to, that's it. That's all you need. The problem is signal versus noise. How do you make yourself heard in all of that? And right now, what we're seeing is that how you make yourself heard is by paying Amazon a shitload of ad revenue.
Yeah.
And that's becoming more and more and more clear. And that's pay to play. And it didn't always used to be that way, but maybe it was always the goal. I mean, maybe it's like, well, we're going to slowly wean this to that point. And who knows how long they've been percolating that business strategy. But right now, yeah, you can make $200,000 with your self-pub book. You're going to spend about 90 grand to get there. So it's a problem. And that's what I hope to God we figure out a way to change. But the thing is, I don't have any answers. I'm just an idiot who wrote a book about orcs and riding pigs and telling dick jokes. But, I guess my hope for publishing is that we get to a point where we stop judging books based on who is involved with them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't, it's like never judge a book by its cover. We've gotten to the point where everybody is judging books by everything but that. You know what I mean? It's like, I would just love to get to a point to where, and maybe some of this is it's a mirage, because I think maybe at the end of the day, we are at a point to where most people who really love books and love story just read a book and enjoyed it, and there isn't much else. But because of the internet and Twitter and Reddit and Goodreads, I think we have all this like stuff coming in that sort of clouds and pollutes the issue. So, I don't know. There we go. There's my answer. I don't know.
Gotcha. I gotcha. And I have another difficult question for you. You mentioned D&D. You're a big D&D fan. How does a game like D&D survive in the digital era that we're in?
God, they're thriving right now, though. I mean,
oh really?
Oh yeah, like I mean, oh Jesus. I think a lot of it is just they survived enough. Like, I think there was a million times they could have died along the way, but they survived to a point to where the digital age suddenly was working to their advantage. Things like this, like what we're on, like suddenly you didn't have to be at a table with everybody. COVID proved that. I mean, we already knew it. People were already gaming in online spaces like this, but when COVID forced the issue, it just took off. Like, there are so many people whose story is, I started playing during COVID. Like, but it was already in a renaissance and on a rise before that. I mean, things like Stranger Things referencing it hit, Critical Role happening, like all of these things sort of, I think it was just a convergence of events and they hit the timing just right. And so, I mean, and they're making adjustments and trying to figure out a way to exist in the world we're in. And they're, some people will say they're fail and some people will say they're not. I think my thing about D&D is it's always good for any industry, no matter what it is, to have that 800-pound gorilla, because while you can fault them or get pissed or whatever, without them, they're a lodestone to draw people. If you don't have them, no one goes off into other places. So it's like, maybe you if you don't have D&D, it's very difficult to find things like Blades in the Dark or Dungeon World or, you know, Burning Wheel or any of these smaller games that are doing things very differently. But, you know, without that sort of that big juggernaut in the room to sort of get everyone going, like tons of people come to the hobby one way and then they go off in their own directions and they end up doing really exciting things. And that's a beautiful thing. And a lot of it is just corporate versus creative, right? When things get big, they get corporate, but people can then be creative and spur off from there. So you know, you have people who played their first game of D&D and never worked for Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro, but then they ended up being a game designer somewhere else, and they put it online. And that's the thing, is that the online space is such a problem and a blessing. It drives so much creativity and also so much negativity. So but I'm always going to root for the creatives, and you know, the consumers can be a huge problem, but without them, it's like, what's the point? I don't know. It's tough, but no, D&D is doing hell. I wish, you know, all the power to them. Like they're gonna continue to take some flack because and heat for you know, things that people don't like what they do and whatever. And you know, it'll be ups and downs, but I'm excited for what they're doing. I'm glad they're still out there. Because without them, you don't find the other stuff, you know. So it's cool. I think it's really cool.
I've always been interested in learning how to play, but I like to find the big, thick manual. And I think, well, I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, man, like, don't even worry about it. Just join a game, because the best players, the people who don't know what they're doing. You don't want somebody like, I don't anyway. Like, because really, role playing is just about making decisions. Yeah. So make the decision and then let the people who know how to play be like, okay, here's the dice you roll for that. The rest of it, like, there can be analysis paralysis, which is, I think, what you're experiencing. And that happens, but there's plenty of games that are more rules light that help with that. I would look at one called Beyond the Wall, okay, which uses basically the same rule set as D&D. It's very similar, but it's boiled down, and it has this cool mechanic where you create your characters as a group together, and it goes in a worksheet format. So it's kind of like, do this and do that, and then look to the person to your left and tell them how they fit into this part. And so what ends up happening is it creates this cohesive, like, group immediately. And what's also just, I mean, chef's kiss about Beyond the Wall is when you're done, not only have you created the group, you have created the town you're all from as well, including businesses and townspeople and like surrounding elements, like, is there a fort, you know? And so what's neat is that you do that in the first session, sometimes referred to as session 0. And then after that, it's not all this thing where everyone's a stranger and you got to meet in a tavern. It's like, you all know, like, oh, as children, we did this together and we survived this. And I used to, like, cut hay for your grandma. And, you know, we were sweethearts at one point. And like, and it's really neat. So it's what I started my son on. Like, I didn't start my son on D&D. I started him on Beyond the Wall because it was like, he really got into this notion that we're all going to create this together. Kids love that. You have kids, like, you go sit them down, you got a good group, like, and creating a town is like their favorite part. And suddenly they're like, oh, we know all these people are. It's cool. Anyway, big nerd.
Yeah. Huge. Check it out. I've always been a big Magic the Gathering player, but never got into D&D. So, but maybe I'll check out Beyond the Wall.
Yeah, I mean, I would. I think you probably can even get a quick start rule for free. Like, you can just, you know, look at it. But you would smoke me in Magic. I've played, but I am terrible. I am so bad. It's not even funny how bad I am.
I'm terrible too, but it's still fun to play.
Yeah, it is fun.
Yeah, been playing for years and I'm still terrible, but you know, what are you gonna do?
Hey.
So when you write, do you listen to music?
No, I can't have
No?
any distractions at all. I sometimes listen to music to try to get inspired to get in the right headspace. So I will stop writing, stand up, and like put something on, but I have to turn it off when I go back in.
Oh, wow. I think it's really, some people have to have music and some people don't want any kind of distractions. I think
Yeah,
that's
I'm definitely
interesting.
the non distraction dude.
Yeah. Was there ever a hobby that you wanted to try, but when you tried it, you did not enjoy it?
Oh, most of them. Yeah, no, I mean, most of them. I'm that unfortunate person where if I don't feel like I'm immediately good at something, I give it up, and that's a terrible trait. And I'm trying to breed it out of my son. But yeah, no, from God, from playing guitar to you know, Jesus, like my memory's so bad. I don't even know most of them. I mean, yeah, yeah, most of them.
And also read on your website that you're an energetic and engaging public speaker. What are things that you do to connect with an audience when you are speaking?
Oh man, now I hope that ends up being true. I wrote that bio a long time ago when I was
Oh,
doing
okay.
like 15 cons. I need to update that. Yeah, I did 15 cons in 1 year and 15 conventions in 1 year, and I was on a lot of panels. And of course, you're always trying to make yourself sound impressive in a bio, especially when you're struggling and trying to get people to take notice. Um, I don't know. I mean, I guess I'll leave it to the audience for this to say whether that's true or not. I mean, because I guess some people connect to passion and other people don't. I'm a high strung dude. I mean, and I talk and I have a lot of mannerisms, and sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. What I miss about panels is just trying to. I don't really miss them because the older I get, especially after COVID, the more like anxiety I have about that sort of thing. But um, I think the important thing is to try to understand that you're trying to make sure that they they get something out of the experience, not just you, because you can use it as like a plat. And I've seen people do this. And unfortunately, I've been guilty of this, and I probably still will be at times. But I've seen a lot of authors where they're clearly trying to bolster some self-conscious, some self-esteem issue, and so they're not reading the room. And having performance background helps with that, but
Yeah.
understanding that people are there maybe to be entertained, maybe to learn something, whatever. But you've got to learn that it's not actually about you. Um, it isn't. It's about them. Um, you're up there speaking and they're in the audience because they're looking to get something out of it. And if you don't deliver, and most panels don't deliver. Being a moderator for a panel is one of the hardest jobs that there is, and very few people do it well. And so it's a tough thing. I think as popular as conventions are, I think a lot of them just miss it. I think they just miss the boat. But I'm getting old and I can get crusty and judgmental, I guess.
For someone who struggles with public speaking, are there any advice you would give them to who would ask you for advice on making it easier? What advice would you give them?
I mean, I certainly think that you have to figure out what it is about you that makes it. No, I'm going to abandon that answer. Why do you feel a need to public speak? I mean, it's like I think it was Penn Jillette of Penn and Teller. I think this is right. Who talks about how it's really important to have a hobby in your 30s that you're bad at, which sort of relates back to your other question. To do something that I think that's right. But I mean, I have a lot of friends in the stand-up comedy world, and there's a lot of people who use stand-up comedy as like a form of therapy, and that's like, if that's really obvious, that's a terrible thing to do. If it's obvious to the audience, that's not good. If they have no idea and you're still doing it, then great. But I think for people who are struggling with public speaking, it's like, well, why do you feel a need to do it? I mean, yes, great, challenge yourself, but at the same time, like, why are you putting yourself through that kind of torture? Um, I mean, there are people who sorry, I got distracted because my fire just collapsed. I was like, please don't fall on the deck and like burn my house, this house down. It's not even mine. I was like, oh God. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think what I would tell myself right now is that remember how important it is to be concise. And I think I like on this thing we're doing, I haven't done that. Like I've been like all like my answers have been way too long. I think clarity of speech and being concise and just finding a way to connect
Mhm.
is half the battle. But I mean, if you're struggling, like ask yourself, like why are you putting yourself through this? You
Right.
might find the answer right there.
Yeah, you mentioned stand up comedy, and recently I was talking with author Richard Nell. He said writing is like when you tell a joke and then you wait a year for a laugh because you publish a book and then you wait for people to read it and reviews to come in. So it made me
Yeah.
think of that. Must be torture to wait to work so hard on something and then it just kind of be out there and you have to wait for a reaction.
Yeah, no, I mean, like it is, it sucks. And it's hard because we're wired culturally for overnight successes to be the thing, right? Like we're getting more and more immediate um, minded, and that's the other thing that publishing is struggling with. And the one thing that indies and self pubs will tell you, well, we have it over on trad because we don't wait 7 to 9 months through this, you know, crazy marketing scheme where and it's true. I mean, trad focuses way too much on the front end and doesn't do anything half the time once the book comes
Hmm.
out. And so it is weird. Like, oh, we're courting Publishers Weekly and Kirkus and Wall Street Journal and New York Times and like Library Journal, and then we either get those reviews or we don't. And then they either do, and whether they do or they don't, then it's like they literally do all this run up, and then the book comes out, and they forget that people's attention spans like it's really needs to be flipped. It's like once it's out, then hit 7 to 9 months of crazy push,
Yeah.
but they don't do that, right? And the indie world knows that, but the indie world has its own problems that they haven't solved yet, and that's just the way it is. But um, yeah, no, it's absolutely true. I mean, and like the slow boil, like for Bastards, like what's tough about it is that it was not like an overnight like huge success, right? It's been this just complete. They never dip, but they never rise. I literally sell the same number every day. It's
Hmm.
this just I'm the engine that could, right? Or at least the series is. I shouldn't even say me. The Bastards books are it's just not even the engine that could. What is it? Tortoise and the hare. They're the tortoise. They just kind of keep going. And it's frustrating because, you'll see like massive sales in a book that you got done writing like 7 years ago,
Hmm.
you've moved on. It seems like a lot of people have moved on. Um, so it takes this weird place where things need to have that flashpoint, and it's really hard to get that. And it's hard for TV shows. It's hard for I mean, it's hard. It's tough
Yeah.
because everyone is so bombarded with all this stuff. But books really have an uphill battle because whether anyone wants to admit it or not, at least in the U.S., we're in a place where if a book doesn't get a movie or a TV show, no one gives a
Hmm.
damn. I mean, that's the measure of success for books now, and not within like book spaces. Obviously, like there's really dedicated readers, like the people on Goodreads and stuff who just love books.
Hmm.
Clearly, that's not the way they think. But when you're trying to talk about the level of sales needed for like bestseller status or to be set in a table in Costco and like that amount of stuff, it's those numbers are massive. Like, and it's tough. It's really hard to do it. And if publishers knew how to do it every time, they'd do it every time. And they don't. They don't know how to do it every time. It's alchemy. It's like good luck. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So, um, but no, the stall is tough. Like there is a big. I was talking about this with a friend, a successful self pub author. Um, there's a big disconnect. Self pub authors are like constantly on, like riding on the back, like getting a piggyback ride of their book. It's like they're on their book's back, just constantly like giving the encouragement, riding it, steering it, directing it. That's not the way it is for trad people. It's like it's already like grown up and bought a car and moved away and left. So it's a weird thing. I don't even know if that had anything to do with the question, but
It
probably
did.
not.
It did. What books do you enjoy reading, or is there a book that you've read recently that really impressed you?
Yeah. This is like I tend to not read I'm very behind. I don't read a lot of stuff that's current, and that's not like bougie. Like, oh, I don't read modern stuff. It's just it takes me so long to get to my backlist that just stuff
Yeah.
takes forever. But uh, Christopher Buehlman got on my radar because I was asked to blurb the Black Tongue Thief,
Yeah.
and so I did. It was amazing. But then I was like, "Who this guy? Like, who the hell is this?" And and then I go and I pick up Between Two Fires
Yeah.
because I was like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
This guy's he's so good. He's amazing. And so he basically at this point, if it's got his name on it, I'm there. I read a ton of history and biography. I don't read a lot of fantasy when I'm writing, and I'm always trying to at least write. So I'm constantly looking for good inspiration. So I find myself like having to sneak into like university libraries. I'm not a student. I'm not supposed to be there. I did this a lot during COVID to try to find these obscure like history books on stuff that you can't actually buy, because they're just like in the stack somewhere, and taking pictures of pages on my phone, trying to get like research materials. And I know what I'm talking about to inform the stuff I'm trying to do for my fantasy. But I don't know. Like I just read a biography on Thomas Becket that was fantastic. I don't remember. I don't think it was Dan Jones that wrote that. I don't remember who it was. Yeah, I don't know. I also have this problem where as soon as I'm asked something, it goes right out the like. I can't like focus on what it is. But I'm reading Dave Grohl's The Storyteller right now, which has been really fun. I think that's great. I'm not a music guy. I don't understand half of what he's saying about music because I don't get it at all. But he's entertaining, and I respect him. Yeah, I don't know. I'm always looking for that next thing to just. I guess that's kind of like all of us, right? Though we're always looking for that next thing to be blown away by. I think some of us are just more jaded, and so it takes more to get us. It's like it's hard to impress us. And that's hard. I'm also one of those people that I bail pretty fast. Like if I don't finish a lot, so if you don't get me, it's like forget it.
Yeah.
And maybe that comes back to bite me in some ways. But hell, if that's the karma I have, then that's what it is.
So I'll have a couple more questions for you,
Yeah,
just some
sure.
fun questions to finish up with. So the first question is, do you have a favorite family recipe?
Yes. This is going to sound like the most Georgia Southern answer of all time, but it is absolutely true. My mom's pecan pie, literally, I will fight anyone who says it's not the best. And I know that there are other people out there that will say that, but no, I will literally declare jihad on somebody. And so, yeah. And it has converted many people. People have flat out said, I don't like pecan pie. It's like, yeah, you do. You just don't know it yet. So yeah, that's an easy answer. Fast. Oh, look, I did a quick answer.
Yeah, there you go. You're on a roll. So if the zombie apocalypse happened today, what would be your weapon of choice?
Halberd. Halberd gives you reach. It has a stabbing thing for quick thrusts, and it has an axe blade for the decapitation. So you keep them away. You don't have to reload it. It's easy to fix if it breaks because the wooden pole, as long as you know how to reattach it, you can sharpen that axe head all day long. Really, the most vulnerable point is the spike. But I mean, it's not like a knife point. It's not thin. It's basically like a giant, like railroad spike. So no, halberd all day.
Oh, nice. Good answer. If you were in your books, let's say the Lotlands, would you survive?
No.
No.
First of all, my eyesight's terrible. So there's no contact lenses in the lot. So no. I think most of us, wouldn't. It's just like, whatever ailments in our modern world, we survive because of medicine. I have some wilderness experience, but I'm not like I'm not amazing. I know. Mm-mm. Not a chance. I mean, I think if I could find like some kind of niche where I could, I mean, it would be hard, but I'd have to be, it would be more cerebral. I wouldn't be able to survive on like a physical, like on the front lines. I'd be a scribe, some
Yeah.
myopic, like little, like, but as soon as the town gets like sieged, if I wasn't hiding, immediately put to the sword, it's like, forget it.
What was your first job?
Oh, I want to say it was 1995, North Point Mall, Natural Wonders.
Hmm.
I'm dating myself. Do you guys remember those stores? Like those
I do.
stupid
Yeah. It sounds
new age
familiar.
stores, like selling like Celtic music CDs and like, like
Yes, I do remember those. Yeah.
natural wonders. I think that's right. I want to say
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah. We had one of those too, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Oof.
what did you learn from that experience?
But I hate having a boss. Um, no, I mean, you're so young and stupid. You don't care. I mean, like, I learned I could sell telescopes and I knew nothing.
Mm.
I wasn't even on commission. Like we had this little section of like astronomy, like telescopes and shit. People would come in and be like, if I want this for my beach house and put it out on my deck, would I be able to see like the boats in the marina? I'm like, absolutely. And why I was trying that hard, I don't know. Because if I was on commission, it would have made sense. But it was just this stupid kid sense of like, I want to be good at something and I want to seem knowledgeable. And like, but I worked at it with a buddy and like, do you remember Stomp Rockets?
Yeah.
Like this. So he worked at Tower, not Tower Records, it wasn't Tower, some CD shop, CDs. Yeah.
Yeah.
He worked like down. So we were upstairs and he was downstairs, but they were across from each other. So you could kind of see them over the balcony of the mall. So we used to stomp rocket at each other,
Oh,
like
nice.
across the mall. And the thought that like no one fired us or no one said anything, literally no one ever said anything. Like it's just like, I don't know, man. I don't know. Like in some ways I wish I could go back. And in other ways it's like, I look at, I look at that now and I just think, oh, thank God it didn't end there,
Yeah.
because that's some of the hardest. I mean, customer service is a nightmare. I respect anyone who can do it, but it's an
Yeah.
absolute nightmare.
Yeah. It's tough. Dealing with the general public is really tough. So, a question I like to ask all of my guests, just so I can improve my questions and things, is if you were in my position, was there a question that you would have asked that I did not ask?
Ooh, God. Do you ever give a quick answer? uh, yeah, I mean, no, I no, I don't think so. I mean, hell, man, I wouldn't know the first thing about doing what you're doing. I wouldn't even be able to put it online. I'm a
Hmm.
Luddite. Like I'm lucky that I was able to get this to work.
Yeah.
Um, no, I think it, mm-mm.
Mm.
I mean, you either find these fun, I find these fun, but
Mm.
it's fun just because I get to talk to an adult.
Yeah.
I mean, you have kids.
Yeah.
I'm like,
That should be.
that's it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just kind of like, no. I mean, I didn't go into this in this space of like, oh, I'm going to critique this guy. So honestly, no, I don't know. No, I think you didn't. Hell, you didn't make me feel uncomfortable. Make me feel like, why am I doing this? So,
Oh, good. Mission accomplished.
just, yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah. Yeah. I just try and add new questions. And I do really, I try and ask questions that will that provide you a chance to give long answers. So I really appreciate the long answers. So,
well, I hope I hope people watching it do, but sometimes I feel like it's like, you could just,
yeah. No, it's good stuff. So if someone wants to connect with you, where's the best place to find you to connect with you?
nowhere.
Nowhere.
No, I mean, I have Twitter. I suck at it. I don't know. I mean, um, I have a website. I don't know why. I probably won't for very much longer.
Mm.
So I don't know. I'm just not good at interneting.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I have my like personal email up on my website, but I like shouldn't. Because most people, I mean, yeah, there's lovely people who occasionally like send you a message and say such nice things, but for the most part, you know, I don't know. It's I I don't know. I guess I left Self Pub behind, hoping and thinking that like Trad was going to provide all these amazing professional publicists and people that were going to handle that. And when that didn't end up being true, I think I just didn't know what to do, so I just don't do anything. Um, I don't know. I no. I mean, I'm not on Goodreads the way I should be to be to like generate like Reddit. I've
Mm,
never like I've done AMAs, but that's the only time I'm ever logged on.
mm.
Um, no, I don't know. I don't know. And that people should tell me, but I left Facebook behind. I tried Instagram for like a hot minute. Was like, forget this.
Yeah.
Um, the only reason I'm on Twitter is because of like, honestly, I'm not on there for me, like to get, I'm on there for my interests. Like I'm
Mm,
following like the stuff I want to follow. It isn't about generating like my own thing.
yeah.
So I'm terrible at it. So no, I guess I just don't care enough. And it's not that I don't care about people or readers or any of that. Like I just don't, I don't anonymous like contact like that is just strange for me. I feel
Yeah.
like most people are not earnest. And so it's tough. That's kind of the reasons I miss cons, but at the same time, I'm not in any hurry to get back to them.
Yeah. Well, we're about the same age because I'm 42.
Hmm.
So I think we come from the age of, I remember when there was no really, when no one knew what the internet was. And so it's changed a lot. Yeah.
Were
It's been,
you an early adopter? Like, do you remember?
I was one of those nerds and dialing up to AOL in way back in the day in 92, 93. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I was a nerd, but like not in a tech way, and so
Yeah.
I didn't get on the internet until I was a sophomore in college.
Hmm.
So that would have been 2002.
Oh,
That's
wow.
how long I held out. And I still don't really understand. Like I understand it, but and I kind of use it, and it is definitely has improved. I'm dependent on it in a lot of ways, but I also know that people use it in ways that I don't even comprehend.
Yeah.
And so people have said before, like, oh, you should do like a podcast or a video blog. Like, I wouldn't even know what to do. So yeah, no, it's an interesting thing. You're right though. I remember getting my first cell phone and
Hmm.
it's sitting in a box forever because I was still on calling cards, and it was like it felt stupid to not use the calling cards because you had so much balance on
I
them.
remember that. Yeah. I remember calling
Mhm.
cards. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Wow.
mean,
Yeah.
so it's and in a lot of ways, I guess I'm stuck. I mean, I'm as my wife says, I am looking forward to being an old man because then I don't. Then it's like, who can fault me? But right now, it's a little weird. I think a lot of people see like a guy my age and like a dude, and they're like, why don't you know everything about computers?
Yeah.
Like, I just don't.
Calling cards. Wow. I remember those. Was it like 35 cents a minute or something like that for long
Yeah,
distance or yeah.
yeah. I don't. I mean, I probably still have one somewhere, like stuffed in a drawer because I never finished it, and then yeah, but
Yeah.
trying to explain that nowadays is a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
people don't even get it.
No, you have to have lived it. It's hard to believe in this world. Yeah.
Yeah, you went to a payphone and used a calling card, or you had a dorm phone and went to a calling. You what? Yeah, it took 6 minutes just to get through the fucking number and the pin and the it's just like, it's like by that time you'd forgotten why you were calling. It's just
Yeah. Oh man, I forgot
Mhm.
about. Yeah. Wow. Good memories.
Yeah.
Expensive memories.
No, right.
Yeah. But
Mm.
thank you for coming by. I know you're busy. You have lots of stuff to do, and you have family and work. And so thank you for taking some time to chat.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on to ramble.
No, no, anytime. Yeah, this is good stuff. So yeah, and I'll leave all the links that you don't follow for you
Yeah.
down below,
Have
so
fun,
anyone
guys.
can try and connect with you. But cool. Thanks again for coming by, and have a good evening.
No, it was my pleasure.